Salams, Namaste, Vanakkam and Sawubona. We are back with another edition of Tabloid Talk, broadcasting from our Durban North studios, dealing with issues that matter. Like our page on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest updates. Click on the bell icon to subscribe. We had a great feedback to our human trafficking segment from our last show and a lovely response for the competition. Both competitions are still running until the 31st of October, and they are the Nando's and San Lemire giveaways. Win a Nando's 1,000 Rand voucher for a week or a weekend away to the South Coast valued at 2,600 Rand. Tell us in the YouTube comment section about your Nando's curbside experience, and for the San Lemire treat, tell us why do you deserve to win the prize. It's easy. 20th of October was Down Syndrome Awareness Day. How many of us know what this genetic disorder is all about? How does it affect individuals and families? The incidence of having a child with Down syndrome is 1 in 1,000 in developed countries and 1 in 650 in South Africa. Why is South Africa lagging behind when it comes to social inclusion and inclusive education? We are still very much stuck in the past, in the separate but equal mentality where children with intellectual disabilities like Down syndrome are put into special schools and treated sometimes in ways where they should be kept out of public sight. What about young adults who will not be employed because they are perceived as incapable of doing anything? As a father of a young man with Down syndrome, the challenges were enormous. My son is now 21 years old, but remains isolated. And I might say that it is the same for many parents. People with Down syndrome are high functioning. They simply need to be integrated, but how? Not enough is being done about this in our communities, and there is almost zero happening from the government. South Africa is a century behind when it comes to other countries like Denmark and the United States. Right after the break in today's Tabloid Talk, I'm chatting to Janus from an organization called Downside Up. Janus is a father of little Nicholas Jake, who is 6 years old and who has Down syndrome. Stay tuned. Don't switch off. We will be right back, right after the break. Welcome back to Tabloid Talk with me, Mohammed Ismail. Life can be fun and challenging at the same time. In fact, it can also be turned from the downside up. Having a child with Down syndrome or who has been affected by a genetic disorder, otherwise known as trisomy 21, is a blessing for many parents, and yet there are others who cannot cope. There are individuals and organizations that are just a phone call away who can help with early intervention and counseling, and such organizations include Downside Up South Africa and Down Syndrome South Africa, or rather Down Syndrome Association KwaZulu-Natal. I'm talking today to Janus. He's the director of Downside Up South Africa, who has a vibrant 6-year-old boy by the name of Nicholas Jake, who recently got himself caught in a staircase. Janus, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming. I almost said Nicholas Cage for a moment. What's it been like having a child with Down syndrome? And it's always person first, because people tend to say they tend to identify the disability rather than the child. So it's always person first.
Yeah, Nicholas is a character. I mean, he's taught us so much in life, and he's just a vibrant 6-year-old that is like any other kid, except he's got Down syndrome.
What was it like the first time, or rather when the doctor came to you and when he was born and he said, Mr. Horn, sorry to tell you, sometimes they say that, sorry to tell you, and say your child has got Down syndrome, and how did you react to that? Because as parents, we don't sort of expect that. We expect sort of normal, and child's going to play soccer, and he's going to play cricket, and he's going to play golf, those kind of things.
Well, we actually thought Nicholas was normal at birth. He was in ICU, and when Kelly went for a 1-week checkup, the gynecologist said to her, oh, by the way, there's a chance that your son might have mosaic Down syndrome. And we're like, what are you talking about? And he said, oh, didn't the pediatrician talk to you about it? And we said, well, he's been in NICU, he's got tubes everywhere. I mean, we couldn't see any difference. I mean, we could hardly even see him. And it was a huge shock. I mean, yeah, you think you've got a normal child, and we didn't even know anything about Down syndrome. So,
I think, lots of parents do experience that. It's either they are told that the child has Down syndrome at birth or a day or two later. Because I think it's either insensitivity or just maybe just gets ignored by doctors. And I'm talking with respect, and unfortunately that happens. Any cases that parents have reported that to you?
A lot of people find out afterwards, but many have found out before. I just think it's very difficult for doctors sometimes to handle the situation. The pediatrician, I don't think, wanted to address it, and she thought the gynecologist had spoken to us, and we just sat and we were shocked.
But there are a lot of signs in terms of scans and medical aspects where, the scan can pick up whether there's, probably a thickening in the neck or other developmental delays which shows in that direction. So I think that those kind of factors should be spoken about to parents. Did you talk to that, or did the doctors or the pediatrician or gynecologist speak to you guys about that initially during the pregnancy?
No, nothing was picked up. So he didn't have any of the markers that you'd normally have with the thickening of the neck or the nasal bone. There's a lot of issues, but he had none of those.
Functionality and development as he's been, and he's got an older brother also, I think.
No, he's got a younger brother.
Oh, he's got a younger brother.
And an older sister.
Okay. How's it been with the kids in terms of development? Because sometimes that you find that as the kids get a little bit older, there's sort of more awareness that we've got a brother or a sibling with Down syndrome or a disability, and you tend to shy away. And it's up to us as parents to make it workable. And how has it been with your other kids?
Well, I must compliment both my children, Laura and Ethan. Ethan has been a superstar. Although he's the younger brother, there's only a year difference in age, and he really looks after his older brother. So they've accepted Nicholas has got Down syndrome, but he's a normal child. So they include him in everything that they do. And Ethan will tell people, my brother's got Down syndrome, but he's my brother, and he's a normal child.
And Ethan understands what Down syndrome is?
He understands his brother is different. I don't think he understands the full complexity of Down syndrome, but he's learned to cope with it. And as I say, it is amazing to see how a 5-year-old will look after a 6-year-old.
Milestones, Janus. And I found, like, my son is 21 years old today, he's got Down syndrome, and I found that when he was little, and there's a 2-year difference between his sister and him. And as his sister developed and learned, so did he. And I think there tends to be a sort of covering of the gap when it comes to development of the child who has an intellectual disability, because that's what Down syndrome is, apart from just being a genetic disorder. And they seem to progress quicker when there is a sibling who's also achieving.
Yeah, I mean, we find it when you drive in the car. Ethan will say, come Nicholas, say car. And then Nicholas has to say car. Then he says, okay, Nicholas, say tree. And it's the whole time, let's try and teach my brother something. Counting, adding, subtracting. These are small things, but it's a huge milestone for Nicholas to be able to do this. And I mean, as I say, Ethan is the guy that drives him the whole time.
Incidental learning, for example, billboards. When you're driving past and you see an advertisement, you see the same advertisement on television, you see the same advertisement on billboards, and the child recognizes it and suddenly it reads it out. So that's incidental learning. How do you find that developed? Isn't that amazing?
With us, there are so many things that you learn about the whole time. And we do Makaton speech, for instance, and it's just by recognizing the visual concept. Nicholas sees a picture and he'll remember. So it's all about routine, and I get quite emotional when it comes to.
Yes.
to Nick and him growing up.
I can understand that, and I identify with that. I know what you're saying. We have been in a fortunate situation where we can do things for our children, but if you look at the great development of the government and reaching out to communities who don't have things, I think there's a huge lack of accessibility when it comes to parents from rural areas and parents from outlying areas who don't have access. What do you think that the government needs to do more, and why isn't anything being done to alleviate these problems of a lack of education and understanding? And I want to touch a little bit on provincial hospitals, for example, because I found in the past, and when I was chairperson of Down Syndrome South Africa at one stage and the other organizations, that you'd find a mother has a child with Down syndrome. Suddenly the child is 2 years old and they're not achieving their milestones. I think the government is doing a disservice when it comes to issues of disability, especially when it comes to children with intellectual disabilities, because there is no dichotomy. When we speak about disability, we think physical, you don't think intellectual. So how do we fix these problems?
Well, that's why we decided to start Downside Up South Africa. So we can try and get doctors, physio, speech therapists, everyone involved, where they give time pro bono or we make a contribution towards their costs to help people that can't afford this, because government, it seems like nothing gets done. And if you look at the current state of government hospitals, if somebody has to go and get medication, they stand in a queue for the whole day. If you have a child that's got Down syndrome, you can't go and stand in a queue for the whole day. And I just think, a lot more needs to be done. And we need to work together with all the organizations to go to government and say, these are the needs, please assist, and put a plan of action in place.
Now, yours is a fledgling organization. How much of inroads have you made thus far by virtue of what you're telling me? Are people coming forward?
No, well, we've only been going for the last 4 or 5 months, and it started during lockdown, which was a bit of a problem. But we've already got certain doctors that have come forward and said, we will assist you with certain things. I mean, speech therapists have come and said, Janus, we would like to be involved. Occupational therapists. So we're trying to put booklets together. We want to teach parents what they need to do. So, it's a thing where, I don't want to say it's a self-help system, but you show someone what they need to do with physiotherapy, with crawling with a baby. It's difficult. I mean, a normal kid starts crawling and there you go. With a Down syndrome child, you have to show them this leg has to go first, then that leg. And we were lucky and fortunate that we had a physiotherapist that could do that and show Nicholas how to do it. And it took him 9 months to crawl, where his brother started crawling at 4 months.
Yes, the milestones are largely different. Social integration, inclusive education, these are dire challenges that we are still faced with. And for me, the last 20 years almost, it's been repetitive. White paper 6 is forever spoken about. Nothing has been implemented. So there is a dire disservice that's being done to parents of children with Down syndrome and to the children themselves. Why are we still stuck in the doldrums? That's the first part of the question. And the other one is, when we're talking about social integration, and I've experienced it, and I know you've experienced it also. Shame, your son's got Down syndrome, and I don't even want to say it.
Yeah, I mean, everyone always says, shame, but they're such happy children. I mean, we found it...
But aren't all children happy?
I mean, we found it personally where we applied to a private school to take Nicholas to a private school. The school had 8 or 9 children in the class, and we said we would have a facilitator go that is appointed by the school. We'll pay the facilitator's salary, plus we'll pay the school fees and everything else. And the first thing that the deputy headmaster said is, her biggest concern is, what are the other parents going to say? And, it's a thing where those children will learn just as much as Nicholas will learn, because they're integrating. You can't discriminate against a child that has got a disability. They need to be inclusive, because a child like Nicholas will learn so much going to a normal school. And, the children won't, how can I say, ostracize them, because,
I think there's a lack of education in households itself, where, you know, if you can sort of put it on the same level as bullying, what do we teach our children? How do we teach our children to be different when it comes to a next child who has Down syndrome or a physical disability or another intellectual disability? Why is that education not happening in the houses, in the homes?
Well, you could say it's not happening in homes, but it's also not happening in schools. I mean, I've had teachers come to me and say, well, I didn't know anything about Down syndrome. I had to go and Google it. And if the teacher doesn't know, how would the children know? And that's also what we're trying to do, is create awareness. You know, trying to educate people. People with Down syndrome are normal people. They might be a little bit slower, but they're normal.
Now that brings me to the awareness campaign, the recent awareness campaign that you guys that you had. 20th of October was National Down Syndrome Awareness Day. Are people receptive? Or do they just walk past and, oh, here's an organization, let's just give them something, or buy a biscuit like you guys had those biscuits giving out? Is it just lip service, or people genuinely interested in wanting to make a difference and say, hey, listen, how can we help? Is this happening in communities, or is it just, just another organization doing another thing?
You get different people. Some people come and they'll phone us. I mean, today I got a phone call. Somebody said, Janus, I saw your wife at the Shongweni market. She was selling T-shirts and biscuits and everything. I've got a shop, and can I please sell your shirts in my shop? I'm not going to charge you to put them in the shop. I just want to help. You know, that's what you want. You want people to assist and freely assist. Some people come and they ask you, what is Down syndrome about? They don't know anything about it. We also have some people with Down syndrome that man our stands to basically create that awareness. I think it's very important that people can see, look here, this is a person that is a normal person. They can communicate with you. They can have a conversation with you.
I think there's just not enough happening when it comes to training of our own children, or rather prepping them for the greater expectations of life, because children with Down syndrome are high functioning. And if we don't look after them from an early age, obviously they're going to languish, that's a word, languish. And I think that the issue of self-advocates is a very, very important aspect, where the children must be speaking for themselves as opposed to us speaking on behalf of those children when they become young adults and how they want to live their lives. Because we've seen some of them getting married, we've seen some of them getting employed, but not a lot of it is happening, especially in the employment side, especially in the self-advocacy side. They are high functioning. So what is going wrong when it comes to that?
I think it is a thing where most or many of the children with Down syndrome, people are very actively involved until the age of about 12 or 13. And that is generally when the wheels tend to fall off. And the children just get left. And that is the thing where parents do a lot of work initially, but they don't follow through. Schoolwork starts becoming more and more, and the children can't always cope with mathematics, but they could do other subjects.
Yes.
And I think that is where a lot of focus needs to be given, is ensuring that children with Down syndrome actually finish school. Because once they finish school, then they'll go on to the next step. They would want to go to college, they want to go somewhere else, and they have the ability, but it is a lot of hard work.
Do you think we're still stuck in that separate but equal kind of mentality where children with Down syndrome, intellectual disabilities must be shoved into special schools and must be kept under lock and key and out of public sight? And
no, most definitely. If you go into the rural areas, the kids with Down syndrome are locked in a room. They don't even come out. They don't go to school. They don't get educated. It's, I don't want to say like a sin having a child with Down syndrome to many people.
Sometimes it's also a little bit of a traditional thing where people believe that the gods were not kind to us and they gave us a child with Down syndrome. But I would say differently, that those things don't exist, because when you have a child with Down syndrome, your life takes a different direction and suddenly a whole new world opens. Was that an experience like that for you, a whole new world opening?
I mean, it's been a life-changing experience. I mean, I knew nothing about Down syndrome. I mean, you know, you used to go and see someone with Down syndrome, but you never really knew much about it. Now, all of a sudden, you know, there's a Centre Careways that got adults with Down syndrome. There's so many things. And for us, our entire life has changed. Because we couldn't get Nicholas into a school, so we had to start homeschooling. We had to employ a teacher. So there's a lot of things that we've had to do, and it impacts me, you, and so many other people out there.
Sometimes it's a sad state of affairs where parents don't want to accept the reality of having a child with Down syndrome. And I think there's a dire lack of education when it comes to that, and accessibility. What plans does Downside Up South Africa have to counter those issues or those problems?
Well, when we're currently busy putting guides together. So when a mother at a hospital has a child with Down syndrome, we will actually go to the hospital and go and see the mom, give her some things and tell her it's not the end of the world, and try and educate her and help her to achieve as much as she can. And that's why the group started with a group of ladies in a WhatsApp group. All chatting. They've all got ideas. They're all supporting each other. And from the idea, a small idea has grown to a little bit of a bigger idea. And every day there's something new coming in. Somebody's got a new idea. Somebody wants to add value. And it's taking time, but we're hoping to.
You'll get there. A little bit about education. We're running out of time because we're trying to. Education when it comes to your son Nicholas, you told me earlier that he was part of a pilot project by the government, and for some reason that never got off the ground.
Yes, the government approached me and said, look, Janus, we'd like to include Nicholas in a government school as a pilot project where he'd go to school, we'd work on a curriculum within the mainstream schooling system. He had to go and see a psychologist. The psychologist postponed the meeting, and it's 2 years later and we've heard nothing from them again.
Why is the system working so slowly?
People change. The person that was in the department is no longer in the department. The next person most probably thought it's too much work. It will go away, don't worry, just forget about it.
Unfortunately. Some parting advice to parents, new parents are expecting a child and who has had a child with Down syndrome now recently. I would tell them, you're not alone. What would you tell them?
It's not the end of the world. It felt like the end of the world initially, but it's not the end of the world. There is so much to be grateful for. I mean, if you look at my son, he makes us so happy. I mean, he's a character, and he'll go places. He will make a difference. And you know what? We will try and make a change as well.
Well, thank you very much, Janus. Thank you for watching. Don't go away. We're going to be right back. There you have it. Down syndrome is a genetic condition and cannot be cured. However, it is up to us as parents to make a difference. Start early and get the necessary occupational therapy from a very early age for your child. Socially integrate your child. Do not keep them under lock and key. Do not feel ashamed or shy of having a child that is different. Join organizations, participate in awareness campaigns, and make your voices heard. Our children are differently abled. They are high achievers. Let them become self-advocates and speak out for themselves. If you need support, call Downside Up on 083-635-7682 or the Down Syndrome Association, KZN, on 062-443-1661. Thank you for watching. Enter our Tabloid Talk competitions, like our Facebook page, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the bell icon. I'm Mohammed Ismail for Tabloid Talk. Thank you for watching.